We've done a lot of work in understanding what our standards say and what they imply for student learning. And now it's time for us to dig a bit deeper and truly study our standards. So what I'd like for us to start to consider is, how are our standards organized? Thinking back to our house graphic organizer, we know that there's 4 main strands that make up ELA: reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. We think of reading and writing as those load-bearing walls, and speaking and listening and language as a spiral staircase that really bring the reading and the writing process to life. We know that foundational skills are underneath in terms of holding up our house and really setting strong foundations for students to be able to access reading and writing standards. What I like for us to think about here as we look at the house is really to think about the author's intent, because we notice that our author of this document used colors as a way to organize the standards. So I begin to ask myself, why did the author choose to use the colors that she did? Lucy Calkins says that everything that's in a text is on purpose, that there's nothing there that's by accident, and it's our job as readers to figure out why it's there. So let's do a little investigation. Why are our standards organized in the way that they are? And where are there connections between our standards? We're going to take a look at the reading strand specifically and zoom in. So I want you to look with me on the anchor standards for reading. Notice here that our author of our standards has identified 10 anchor standards for reading. These are the college and career readiness anchor standards, and they really help to describe what a student's reading behaviors will look like when they're college and career ready. You know from working with your grade level standards that there's an informational and a literary text standard that come together in order to make this anchor standard. Looking at the 10 anchor standards, we notice that our author has organized this document by using headings. And knowing the nature of a heading, things that are underneath a heading in an informational text are all related by a central idea. So we begin to ask ourselves, why are these standards clustered in the way in which they are? What's the relationship between the standards underneath the heading? That's what we're going to explore now. Consider the first cluster of standards under key ideas and details. These standards really ask students to wrestle with the author's message and really consider, what is the author trying to tell me? Think about Standard 1. It asks students to really wrestle with the explicit and implicit ideas in a text, drawing on evidence to support their thinking. Standard 2 asks students to look a bit further into central themes and main ideas. And Standard 3 really asks students to consider connections between ideas and concepts, and really considering elements of plot and how they develop over the course of a text. All of these things really center the reader in on thinking, what is the author's main message? What is it that the author is trying to tell me? Or what's the gist of what I'm reading? Now consider the standards that are under craft and structure. This cluster of standards, standards 4, 5, and 6, ask the reader to dig deeper into their reading. These standards really ask the students to consider, what are the techniques that the author used when they crafted this piece? What decisions did the author make that would impact the telling of their message? So Standard 4 asks students to wrestle with, why did the author choose the words that he or she did in order to enhance their message? Or Standard 5 really asks students, why did the author choose the structure he or she did in order to enhance their message? And think about Standard 6, that asks students to consider, what point of view is the author writing from in order to impact their message. We know as writers of our own text that we make thoughtful decisions about how to write the text that we write. So these standards are really helping students make the link that authors are really intentional when they craft pieces. I like to think of this cluster of standards as reading with an author's eye. So they really help students zoom in and really begin to question, why did the author make the decisions that he or she made in order to enhance their overall piece? The standards in the next cluster are under integration of knowledge and ideas. These are standards 7, 8, and 9. Standards 7, 8, and 9 are clustered together because they all have to do with helping students expand their knowledge base. This is the heart of the reading strand. This is what reading is really all about for kids. It's how we make it meaningful It takes reading away from being a chore and helps kids realize that they read in order to learn from text. Specifically, in these standards, students learn that they read literature in order to take away life lessons and to grow their perspective through culture. They also learn that they read informational text in order to learn more about the world around them. Through standards 7, 8, and 9, we really expand students' thinking. So engaging them in text on the same topic or theme is really critical here so that students can begin to see patterns across text and really take away key knowledge. Standard 10 is all by itself, but that's not because it's a standard that should be overlooked. Standard 10 is actually really what the reading strand is all about. Standard 10 asks students to take all of the previous 9 standards and be able to apply them in text that gets increasingly more complex over time. It also implies here that students should be able to do all of those standards independently and proficiently. So now let's go back to the house structure and make a couple of connections. When we look at key ideas and details in terms of reading and we make the connection to the writing strand, if key ideas and details in reading are when students are able to take away an author's message from a text, when we turn that over to writing and text types and purposes, our students are going to become the authors and they're going to wrestle with how they communicate a message to an audience. When considering craft and structure in the reading strand, or reading with an author's eye, the production and distribution standards in writing are really going to ask students to think with an author's eye, critically about the decisions that they make in their writing, and be intentional about how they craft their own pieces to enhance their message. The integration of knowledge and idea standards in reading asks students to expand their knowledge base, and in writing there's a parallel there as well, as students learn that they're building knowledge of the audience for which they're writing for. And just as range of reading and level of text complexity is in reading, range of writing is standard 10 as well. That standard is really asking for students to be able to write for a variety of time frames and for purposes, and to really grow themselves as writers.